Hello, Coetail colleagues. For Course 5 of Coetail, the final project asked us to transform learning using educational technology. Basically, we had to take a lesson that we normally do, somehow implement information technology into it in a way that was unable to be done without the information technology implementation. What I chose to do was in an English as a second language course at an international high school here in Bangkok, Thailand. I generally use the fourth quarter to teach public speaking. I have two different courses, English 1 and English 2, where I do this. This would be 9th grade and 10th grade English. Basically what I did was I took these units in public speaking and I implemented a voice recognition software. The software that I used was something called Link Test. This way, it can be found at this web address. And it was developed by a colleague of mine that also works at the American School of Bangkok with me. He developed it specifically for ESL learners, unlike other voice recognition software such as Siri, which were developed for different purposes. This one is specifically designed to be used in an ESL capacity.
The initial reason for creating this test was to give students immediate feedback on their pronunciation in English, especially students from Asian countries where I find that the number of phonemes in the language are not sufficient to be able to say all of the English words we have. And students are not aware of the fact that there are sounds that they've never heard or spoken in their lives. And in order to teach these students about these sounds, they need real immediate feedback on what they're saying.
I used it two different ways with the students. What I had the students do was to write their speech and then make a video of themselves giving their speech without any of the computer software. Basically, just to practice their speech, to memorize. I encourage them to practice it over and over and over and to memorize it, and then to use index cards as little cues to the next part of the speech, so that they're engaging the audience, so that they're looking up and talking to the audience and maintaining eye contact with the audience and actually engaging them, rather than looking down and reading and talking to their feet and not engaging. So what I wanted them to do in that first video was basically to go through their speech and then to watch it themselves and see themselves as one of their audience members, and actually see how the speech was delivered by them.
Hello everyone, today I'd like to persuade the drivers and crew have to wear seatbelts when they're in the car. The reason why I talk about it is because the car accident could cause death or injuries, and most likely when the police find out that you're not wearing seatbelts, they'll ask you to pay a ticket, which you have to pay.
The second video that they did, basically I had them take their entire speech, sit down with the Link Test software on a computer, and give the whole speech on there. And what I asked them to do was to count the number of total words in their speech, and then count the number of words that the Link Test software correctly recognized, and make a fraction of that, so that they'd have some sort of gauge as to how well they did.
Today, I'd like to persuade you that the drivers and the crew have to wear seatbelts when they're in the car. The reason why I like to talk about this is that the non-wearing seatbelt can cause death or injuries, or when the police find you that you're not wearing seatbelts, they'll hand you a ticket, which means you have to pay for a fine. Another reason is that the seatbelt use is the most efficient way to save your lives and reduce injuries and crashes.
The third way that I asked them to make a video was to give a whole speech to a friend, to a peer, to a parent, something of that nature, and then have that listener go ahead while they're giving the speech and write down 10 pronunciation suggestions, 10 things that they needed to work on pronunciation-wise, So then later on, they would take that list of 10 suggestions, go on the link test software, and then practice just those 10 suggestions on the software until they got it so that the software would recognize correctly what they said.
So on the right, you can enter your own list of words or phrases, or I have here a preset list, say words that start with R. Okay. Words that start with TH, V. Intonations such as small, big, small, tomorrow. And what happens is every 10th of a second, this speech is analyzed and matched with these words on the right. And if there is a match, that space should turn green.
Legalization. Overpopulation. Overpopulation. Famine. 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 Famine.
And then I had them make a fourth video where they were giving their speech to the class.
Okay, so let's try to fit these criteria with dance. So the first one, physical movement. Dance is pretty much everything about physical movement. So it's a movement of your body, your hand, your feet, whatever.
I like to persuade you all that the drivers and the crew have to wear the seatbelt when they're in the cars. The reason why that I like to talk about this is that do not wear a seatbelt might cause death, which is
What I found with this was kind of interesting. At first, the students had fun with the software. It's kind of interesting to play around with voice recognition software to say something and have some machine understand what it is you're saying. That's kind of interesting. There were times, I don't think any software of this nature has any sort of censoring tool. There were times where it was comical, where they actually were engaged because the software came up with something ridiculous that they said, or at times even something vulgar that it thought they said. And honestly, they're teenage kids. They found great glee in this. I thought it was funny at times. I could be sophomoric. Hey. Anyway, but overall, I do think that the students found this to be a very useful way of doing this lesson. I found it very useful. What I liked about it, what I found truly transformative about it, was that it allowed immediate feedback. I have, I think, about 22 kids in one of these English classes. In the other one, I have about 15. So that's about 35 kids, 37, somewhere in there. In order for me to reenact what the link test software allowed me to do, it's next to impossible. It could have been done, but what I would have had to do was listen to each speech individually, which is very time-consuming and kind of impractical. What's even more impractical, what I would have had to do is every single time they said something that wasn't pronounced correctly, I would have had to stop them in the middle of the speech and correct, their pronunciation. It's possible to do this. Very impractical to do this. Link test saves a lot of time. Voice recognition software saved a lot of unnecessary effort. I think the only other way to do it would be to sit with the student, like I said, every time they made a pronunciation error, to stop them and maybe do some sort of mimicking.
Well, I like the link test is good to know how I pronounce each word, but giving out whole speeches is kind of I have to read over and I have to think which words I got mispronounced. The 10 words, I think that is better.
Alright, why?
Because it helps when you not pronouncing the words right, the word doesn't turn green, but you pronounce it right and it turns green, and it's easier to. I think it's better than this one.
Okay.
I like the 10 words too, because like I said, giving the whole speeches, it's hard to understand which I got wrong. But given the 10 words, you get to know which wrong, like which one I get mispronounced it. And so the one that I mispronounced it could be improved by repeating.
What we also found, and most of the students, if not all the students, said this, as well as the creator of the software, Simon, like before we even did it, said it. The software was much more geared towards the second way that I used it with the 10 suggestions rather than giving the entire speech on it. I do, however, think that giving the entire speech, while at times was frustrating for the students, they actually did learn something from that, and I don't know how much of that I would change. I may break it up and segment the speech and have them do maybe 3 or 4 broken up speech videos of it, if that makes sense. But there were parts where the students were saying they would give their speech and then they'd read back and they didn't recognize what the link test had said they had said. When matching it up with their actual speech, they were a little confused with that. And I think actually in a way that kind of showed them that, hey, there were parts of their speech where maybe people didn't understand what they were saying because they didn't pronounce it, or because they didn't pronounce it properly.
Help me with the confidence of someone else's understanding what I'm saying or my pronunciation, and so I think that was good in that part.
While I was using computer technology in my classroom before Coetail, what I think I really learned from it is how revolutionary the use of computers can actually be in the field of education. As a matter of fact, I think it's a complete game changer, and I think that we really need to change the way that we think about teaching students. I think the classic model is outdated, it doesn't really work for everybody, and it needs some serious tweaks. And I believe that computers and computer technology, any sort of information technology, can vastly improve how we deliver content to students. As for reflecting on my own PLN and where I'd like to go from here in Personal Learning Network, actually I'd like to take the other 15 credits that I would need for my master's and maybe study some coding to learn to write my own programs, and maybe in the future to start my own online school and somehow get that accredited either through WASC or through Cambridge or IB or some similar organization. So thanks for your time, and really appreciate the Coetail experience. Thank you.